Thank you. And I think that it's a great question. I think that baseload energy is going to be very important. Obviously, as a business community here today, energy costs play a huge role in some of the markets today because those margins are so thin. So we have to be very careful that we do have that. Having said that, I think Representative Poppe touched on it. And I've been a member of the Energy Committee for the last 10 years, been honored to serve on that. I've had a great working relationship with the Freeborn-Mauer Electric Co-op in Albert Lea, Austin Utilities, and the SIMPA Group. And I think that the other part of it is obviously baseload energy is very important. I think the other piece that's very important is transmission too. Today, the 2020 CapEx proposal was just approved by the PUC. That's going to allow us to move a lot of power from the areas that we need them in. Locally, I think it is too about balance. I think that we've been able to add some hydroelectric as a renewable, which is good. And locally, it's a big deal for Freeborn and Mauer County. That wind energy production tax that comes back from the state is really helping our property tax owners offset some of that. We can have the argument whether or not you think wind is good or bad, but it's certainly there. And here locally, the Austin, the Northeast Power Plant is going to switch over very shortly. As of today, yeah, natural gas is great, the cost is perfect, but if that spikes, it could be very, very volatile. So I think we need to keep an eye on it. I think we need to keep looking at affordable, reliable energy and make sure that we have plenty of it going forward.
Let's move on. A lot of talk was made about when the budget projections came out. We talked about surpluses, and someone wants to know how can we talk about surpluses when we still have an awful lot of money that we owe that didn't get paid in years past, specifically to the schools. Representative Murray.
Well, I think when you're talking about surpluses, you're looking at excess accumulation of money over what the budget that was put together last year is showing. And so money was borrowed from schools in the form of a shift. That had happened under DFL leadership in the House and Senate the previous 2 years. It was added to in an agreement between the governor and House and Senate Republican leadership in the budget settlement last year. And so we got to the point where we were borrowing 40% of the money from the schools that they're getting on a regular basis to help balance the state budgets. Now, when we start talking about a surplus of $1.2 billion that we're at right now, what that's saying is that, not taking that into account, we've accumulated an extra $1.2 billion over what was projected back in June, July of last year. And that money, first of all, has to go towards filling the coffers. We have to fill the savings account, we have to put money in the rainy day fund, and once that gets filled, then that money starts going back to pay back the school shift. And the school shift so far in February, I think, was paid back $318 million. The Republicans have made a proposal to pay back additional money from that school shift. We felt as with $865 million in budget reserves now sitting there that we were going to be able to pay back some more of that school shift to help these schools out so they don't have to go back and borrow more money going forward. And we were thinking we were doing that in a reasonable, prudent manner by not emptying the cupboards, but taking part of that surplus money. The economy in the state of Minnesota, it still looks like it's improving. Revenues are coming in. We look at the last couple months now, and revenues have continued to grow. And so we think that we could pay down some more of that school shift, kind of get back to where we had the schools last summer, and then continue to work on that going forward, and still leave $400 or $500 million in reserves as it stands right now. So I think it's a prudent thing to do. So that's how we get to the talk about $1.2 billion surplus when a year ago we were talking about a huge deficit.
Representative Poppe.
When we talk about the economy and we talk about growing jobs, it's important for us to remember how we do that. And it isn't, this is my Republican statement, it isn't always, government that creates jobs. It is, we have to do what we can to help support that creation, help support entrepreneurs, help support small business people to grow their jobs and to do things. When it comes to the kind of money that we have coming in, I will say that we have, the economy has improved. That's good for all of us, and that's good because we can see that and because we benefited from that. But to some degree, over the course of the last 10 years, college students have helped support, have carried the load. Their tuition has gone up dramatically. And so when we've had our tough times, we've found ways to maybe kind of a little bit under the radar do some things that, oh, okay, we still look like we've got money. Well, when we're making sure that our college students are paying more, and it's getting to the point where it's unaffordable for middle class students to be able to actually continue on and for families to be able to do that. this year we're looking at, property owners, people who have their property tax statements, and they're just paying more and more, and that's happened over the course of the last few years. So it's not as though we don't need more money within the system. We actually have been finding maybe creative ways to kind of make it look like we don't need more money, but we actually are doing it in different ways. So I think we need to keep in mind that we want to grow jobs, help the economy, but we also have to kind of right the ship a little bit, and we've been going in the wrong direction on some of those things. So if we can continue to grow jobs and reduce the tax burden to certain people, property tax owners and college students being a few of them, then I think we'll be going in the right direction.
All right, thank you. Senator Parry.
So now you got to ask the question again, because I'm so intent listening to the answers.
We're talking about everybody's throwing around the word that we have a surplus, yet a lot of money hasn't come back to the schools that was taken away in years past. So how can you claim a surplus?
Well, I think first and foremost, Representative Murray, had a pretty good explanation of that. I look at it this way. In part of my state government bill, we worked very hard to control where the money was going and how it was going. Taking a business look at that. And I think when you take a look at that and you see the big swing that we had from what was projected to what we have now, taking a look at how the revenues are starting to come back in more than we expected. I think the first round was an extra 60 million. I just heard the other day another 32 million of revenue coming in. That tells a story that maybe there's some confidence out there, or maybe some of the analytics and all of these reforms that were put in last year are starting to kick in, because it sure appears to be that way. I would have to say one thing, though, that is disappointing for me in paying back the school shift. Everybody does it. I don't care if you're DFL or Republican. We've all done it. We're all guilty of that. But what's concerning to me is the fact that when we tried to pay back more, the governor said no. And even the governor said he only wanted to keep about $103 million in reserves. Well, with that extra that we wanted to pay back, we would have left about $500 million in reserves. And that's what we look at, when you have a savings account and you need that money to help you through, you pull it out of the savings account. That's what it's there for. So we were doing our best to help pay back those shifts even quicker than we are right now. But the governor said no, and so we have to deal with that, and we'll continue to move forward.
Thank you, Senator Sparks.
Okay, and I would say too, it's a very good question. I think I'm just going to start by saying too that something very unique that happens only once every 10 years is going to happen this November, and that's because of the census and redistricting. Every state senator in the entire state of Minnesota is up for re-election. Every state representative in the House of Representatives up for re-election. So just remember that. And then I would say that talking about the surplus right now, we have to be a little careful with this. And again, I'm going to agree with Representative Murray that the February forecast came out. We did have $323 million. He explained it very well that the statutes require us to put money back in those rainy day accounts, if you will. But going forward, and like I said, there could be a whole new panel up here next year at this time. But when those lawmakers go back, and again, I don't get me wrong, I agree that the economy is showing signs of recovery. I think we're on the right track. I think that's important. But it's a fact that when those lawmakers go back, whoever it is next January is going to be facing another budget deficit, whether you like it or not. And on top of that, we do have that $2.4 million school shift to pay back. And whether or not we want to talk inflation, we don't have to get into that. But that number can get rather large. So I think it's good news, but I think to call it a big surplus, we have to be a little bit delicate going down that line. But you're going to hear a lot more about it, obviously, going forward during the campaign season.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's really change gears here. We've got a constitutional amendment. It's going to be on the ballot coming up this year. Just want to know why we should vote for or against voter ID when it comes to election time this year. Representative Murray.
Well, I think the reason that we need to vote for voter ID is it brings integrity to the system. We have a very good voter system in Minnesota already. We work very hard at making sure that it operates properly. But when you have issues of same-day registration and vouching for a number of people, I think you run into integrity problems with it. And you have a group out here in the state, this polls at 75 to 80% of the people believe we need to have more integrity in the system. When we sit on committees and we listen to people talk about voter ID, You know who comes to those meetings and who really shares with us that this is important? A brand new American citizen. They're the ones that sit across from us at the table there and say, this